Thank you, Chairman Corker. Thank you, Ranking Member Cardin. Thank you to the witnesses. And thank you to Senators Flake and Kaine for their hard work in framing what we are debating and discussing today, and for the committee as a whole for their engagement on this. I think this is an opportunity for us to demonstrate how the Senate can work well together in an important and difficult constitutional moment. When the President sends American troops into harm's way, those men and women, their families, and the American people deserve clear authorization from Congress, a robust debate in Congress, a strategy that outlines the path to success, and at the moment, I'm concerned we have none of those three. President Trump has not yet presented to us a strategy for success in Afghanistan and Syria. We have taken important steps on a bipartisan basis in this committee, and I'm encouraged to see we're having this hearing today and that there is more than not agreement between our witnesses. But I'll note the absence of an administration witness. The decision to send Americans off to fight in battle deserves our thoughtful consideration and bipartisan effort to produce a clear path forward. This isn't a partisan issue. We have more than 8,000 American troops deployed in Afghanistan, and there are reports several thousand more may soon be deployed. We have hundreds of American troops in Syria who have recently been taking fire from both ISIS and Assad forces in one of the most dangerous and complicated battle spaces on earth. I want them to succeed. We all want them to succeed. But what does success look like? How do we define success? That requires a strategy. What are the national interests we are defending and advancing on these battlefields? We have to have a conversation between the branches, executive and legislative, about what our goals are in Afghanistan and Syria and what it will take to achieve them. Particularly when it comes to our military, I'm not here to criticize the President or disagree with my colleagues across the aisle. I'm here to work with them so that we can do our best to provide our troops with the strategy, the resources, and the support they need. So if I might, I am encouraged that our witnesses both largely agree. Would you take the time I have left to talk to what are the strengths of the AUMF proposed by Senators Flake and Kaine, and what do you see as the areas that might require amendment or improvement? I am broadly supportive and encouraged by what's been framed and what's been presented.
We do have a couple areas of disagreement, but again, as you point out, Senator Coons, we agree on many of these areas. I think the one thing I would take a moment to comment on is I think Ken Flake is a great beginning of that conversation in pretty much every area I talked about. Two areas that are not covered under it that need discussion, not necessarily ultimately inclusion, but discussion, are the detention implications. And then the second is there a special attention to be paid to forces used in a combat role? And I would say Representative Schiff's bill in the House, which speaks to the issue of ground combat forces and essentially as soon as possible notification. It's not an exclusion or a limitation, but a notification procedure that is faster for use of forces, in his case for ground forces in a combat role, I think is an appropriate balance of giving absolute operational flexibility to the commanders in the executive branch, while at the same time allowing the fastest possible dialogue to begin with Congress. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Kathy.
And I'll just, Senator, focus on two things. And again, I thank Senators Kaine and Flake for really working incredibly hard on this. I know you've listened to must be hundreds of people to get what the concerns are and try to get it right. I guess I'd say one thing is a nice to have and one I think I would try to fix. The try to fix is the limitation on associated forces to the having to be part of al-Qaeda. I'd at least like to talk to you all some more about that. I know you must have gotten that after a lot of thought. We all know that one of the top 2 or 3 hardest things is defining the associated forces so that Congress is not authorizing use of force against associates of affiliates of people who say nice things about al-Qaeda. You know, we want it to be either al-Qaeda, groups that are fighting along with them, and keep it narrow. The part to define it associated as part of al-Qaeda seems to me to be a little bit too tight, in that there may be groups that are using the terminology that most administrations use of co-belligerency. You have a different group that is fighting alongside and allied with al-Qaeda, but they really are a different group, and they are not part of al-Qaeda or ISIS. So that is one thing that I would be, that's a little bit too tight. I know you want to keep this tight. And I do think that that association can't be just a group that shares the ideology but is writing white papers somewhere. It's got to be a group that is, in fact, fighting along with al-Qaeda in some way. So I think that idea of co-belligerency is important.
Thank you both for your testimony. I appreciate the opportunity to get your input today.
Senator
Thank
Young.
you, Mr. Chairman.